Have a seat, everyone. So, we just have get the clicker here. Thank you. So, thank you very much for joining us. The aim with this session is to talk about the technology community's response to the refugee crisis. My name is M.Butcher for TechCrunch, and I just want to do a little bit of an introduction to what I've been up to, just so that you can get some context. Then we'll hear from Paula, and then we'll get into the session. So quickly, obviously, we're aware of what happened in the summer last year. This is obviously the build-up to years of civil war in Syria. And obviously, people are fleeing these terrible events. So we want to talk about the humanitarian crisis here, and about how, and obviously, perhaps the undercurrent conversation is that, you know, humanitarian responses means that there's less radicalization. Is that, you know, if you ghettoize people, if you push them away, then they will become radicalized. And so we want to talk about the humanitarian response, especially from a technology point of view. These are just some of the figures that have come out over the last year. Incredible numbers, as you can see. 11 million people displaced out of the Syrian civil war. Almost 1 million people have come into Europe in 2015. I think actually the figure is more closer to 1.5 million. Many people have died, thousands have died trying to get to Europe, to get to safety. And what we've also have learnt is that many of them are from Syria, and these people are actually very well educated. Syria was not a very backward country. It was actually quite well educated, and many of them have aspirations just as you yourselves have aspirations. We're talking about human beings here. And so what we're interested in with TechFugees, my project and the project that my team have been working on, is that if NGOs move slowly, if governments are paralyzed, what can the technology community do? But when we know that technology solutions scale. And so we created a non-profit and social enterprise to coordinate a response. And we're not going to be the only players in this game, but we have quite an international network now, because we started fairly early on last year. So we came up with the idea. We put up a Facebook group. I put up a Facebook group called TechFugees on a Sunday. I was walking around London and just thought, I've really got to do something. There must be some other people who were interested in doing this. So I put up a Facebook group. In the morning, I had 100 members. The next day, I had 300. The next day, I had 500. And now we're approaching 3,000 members of the TechFugees Facebook group alone. Obviously, I was pushing it at an open door. Many people obviously thinking along these lines with myself. So in the space of about 9 days, myself and my team, people like Petra Johansson, Edward Sapira, who works at Wikimedia, Josh Russell, a whole team of people, Frank from SmartUp, put together a conference. And the next day, we also did a hackathon. And really, we were all part of quite clearly an international zeitgeist, because other hackathons happened in Germany, all over the world. But our site very much trying to kind of pull all of this information together, pull all the data about the projects that are going on, projects about reuniting refugees with their families, projects about electricity and Wi-Fi, power, just trying to kind of, in a Wikipedia-style way, list them all, get all that information aggregated and get it out there. Opened up a Slack community for anybody to join, to be involved in helping refugees or get technology solutions out there. We opened up a bunch of media channels. Sorry about that slide, a bit weird. And off we go. And now there'll be TechFugees in New York in February. We've had hackathons in Australia, Warsaw, Oslo, Sydney, Paris. And TechFugees is sort of an international meme. It doesn't, nobody really owns it. It's about the technology community responding to the issue of refugees and this global migration that's going on now. And some of the things that we've highlighted and being able to push out there include things like these projects such as Refugee Info Hub, which Google and Mercy Corps worked on, Meshpoint about Wi-Fi, MedShare, which is a global network for doctors, so if you need access to healthcare, you can access doctors inside a refugee camp. Migrate, which was all about legal migration and being able to take someone through the process to legally apply. And a refugee aid map, which is a location-based app, so that you as a refugee could flip it open and go, what's around me that can help me? And education projects like Funzi. And there's tons of these things out there. And we're going to be discussing them very shortly. So obviously, these are the things that we want to highlight, to promote. The challenges, of course, about integrating refugees into society. So obviously the things that we heard about earlier don't happen. Education, skills, jobs, incredibly important when, you know, if people can't work, then obviously there are going to be things that they're going to be pushed towards which are not going to be great. Learning languages from where they've come to us. These are the opportunities for us. The opportunities for us are also to bring this community into our industry, to give them jobs, to educate, to give them employment. And we need that, you know. And so those are what we came up with this. And so this is how you can contact me. We're forming a non-profit right now. It's going to be a social enterprise. It's not going to be a charity. We want to make it sustainable. So please reach out if you would like to discuss that with me and my team. And now I think we're going to hear from Paolo about what you've been up to. So over to you. And I think, let's start up, mate. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Mike, thank you very much for that presentation. That was brilliant. And I've been a part of this journey, and I want to thank you for also creating the ecosystem and bringing us all together, because if it weren't for players like you, then, for example, Anna and I wouldn't have met. And I think also great friendships grew out of that. So my name is P.Schwarz. I was thrown into this crisis on a sort of wrong foot. I set up a project that's called the Startup Boat to bring people to Greece to develop innovative approaches for social challenges. And without knowing what would happen next, we focused on the topic of migration. So we grew a couple of solutions and saw that we are seeing very high numbers there, and people actually need what we're developing. So it was the first thing as an information platform that's called First Contact, where in the first week we had 17,000 people between Greece and Turkey using that tool. And as we went along, we were approached by a couple of 1,000 people who were actually also working on different initiatives. So we decided to open up the first migration hub in Berlin, and immediately had 200 people on the first day there. And then we, went along on this journey to mature the ecosystem. At some point, what happened was that we understood that we have to start something in order to make this more sustainable. And we set up this idea of an impact accelerator. This is what Startup Aid is today. It's meant to mature the ecosystem. We want to bring humanitarian aid from offline to online. This we would actually do together with entrepreneurs around the world, and we want to use technology and digital structures to do so. I will come up with an example later, but just to give you a feeling of what is happening, you saw that around the refugee crisis in the summer, a lot of effort was put into providing support, but really none of that support was really sustainable, and it was unstructured, so needs were not being met, really. What we're trying to do is to organize, to digitize, to innovate, and to work with the current players in order to uplift the system and do a better matchmaking of efforts, really. So what that means is that we've started working with a number of partners. Also in TechFugees, we focus on a location. We make a recommendation together with the NGOs based on what we think should be implemented. We have a fund out of which we finance these different initiatives, and we can grow them in a short period of time with much less costs than was ever possible, and we can actually include entrepreneurs remotely from around the world who would like to also play a part in monitoring these systems. Now, what's interesting here is that we're really trying to match activists with entrepreneurs, and that for me is the biggest challenge. Really, it's a human challenge that we have to really use our abilities for the first time to together improve humanitarian aid. So A.Kjaer is a perfect example. It's a first aid delivery service, just like any other delivery service, you know. We used a white label solution in order to set up the system, but in the beginning it was running only over WhatsApp and Facebook groups, and based on that system we made 200 deliveries in 10 days on an island that's called Lesbos, where there's 4,000 people arriving each day. Now what this service does is that drivers sign up, they drive first aid goods around the island that are needed by people who are arriving or are providing aid, and that usually then would have to get into a car and drive around all day in order to find blankets, firewoods, all sorts of things. So these are the metrics that we're seeing, and it's really incredible what has happened. Now, 3 weeks after we launched the service, it has become its own NGO. This is the experience of the startup boat. This is the last slide. And again, I think we were all thrown into this topic, and it's something that is here to stay. So I encourage you to think together with me about solutions. Try and look around you, and see what has worked so far and what has not been used in order to really maybe improve the structures in regions that are not as well off as this one, because most of the technology that we need is out there. There are, as I said, white label solutions that you can use, and it's just about making it happen. So please join us in this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so turning now to the panel, Anna, you're based in Berlin. So perhaps you'd like to explain your experience and what you've been working on.
So first of all, I'm very happy to meet you all.
Is the microphone working?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay, good. My Hello again, my name is Anne. My great-grandfather is a refugee, was a refugee. He was German, he was a peace activist, and in the 1930s he had to migrate to Denmark. I am only here because people in Denmark took very good care of my family and made sure that I got the values to take care and consider other people. And I'm just carrying a legacy. The reason why I'm telling you this is really, we have to very carefully consider how we are treating refugees all over Europe right now, because this is a legacy that will be passed on in generations, in many generations for the rest of the world. So we have to really carefully consider what we're doing. So what am I doing to help the current refugee crisis? I don't like to call it a refugee crisis. I like to call it a human potential crisis, because we have people here who we think about as victims. But what they are is that they're survivors. They have come through tremendous routes to Europe right now. We should really see them as pioneers. They have incredible talent, they have incredible resilience, and they are incredibly motivated to make a difference and to help their home countries. And this is what we're doing in Berlin right now. So I've started 4 months ago. It's a school called Ready School. We are educating refugees to become programmers and hackers, because right now we have 43,000 jobs in Germany in the IT sector where we're looking for talent. And we have incredible people coming into this country who are highly motivated, highly talented. And what we're trying to do is to give them 3 to 6 months education to become junior developers, to start in companies, to learn the skills that are needed, not just to change the German tech industry, but also to build solutions for other refugees in the refugee camps, and hopefully eventually go home to their home countries and help rebuild Syria, because, Jesus, this is really needed. This is what we're working on.
Anna, can I ask you? What I think is very interesting about what you're doing is that in education terms, it's much harder actually to get someone to teach someone how to be a builder or a baker overnight, because it's a skill that takes some time. But it's interesting that the technology community can actually affect quite enormous change relatively quickly, because really all you need is Wi-Fi and a laptop and off you go, right?
So what we're doing is really 50% is teaching people how to code, which is one part. But what is really crucial for what we're doing is to connect our students with the community in Berlin who are already working in tech, so whether it be startups, whether it be the Google or the Microsoft of this world, to really see how can they create a network, how can they become part of the German workforce, not just by learning, because you could potentially do that online, which is great, but you need to be part of an ecosystem in order to get a job. So you need both things.
So Anke, turning to you. Now, obviously, great minds think alike, as they say. And while we were doing our hackathon in London, in Germany, you were very much at the center of creating one of Germany's biggest hackathon to look at the technology solutions. So perhaps please explain what you guys did.
Yeah, my name is A.Domscheit-Berg. On Twitter, you find me at Anke D. We had the idea, or I had the idea, I think early September, 54 days before the date, and end of October, the refugee hackathon in Germany took place. You find it under refugeehackathon.de. It was a tremendous organizational effort because we had to plan it 3 different times because our numbers always were too small. Too many people wanted to contribute. So we needed bigger rooms and more donations and more food to eventually have 300 programmers, designers, and refugees finding together digital solutions to make life easier for refugees, but also for volunteers. I have a background with 15 years working for different corporations in IT. So one thing I learned in those 15 years is that all software projects go wrong if you don't listen to those who are the targets of those solutions. So what we did was have a full-day workshop before the hackathon, where we invited primarily refugees from various backgrounds and also experienced volunteers and asked them, what are your biggest problems? What of those problems can you imagine being solved by digital solutions? Where have you probably already found such solutions? How well or not well do they fulfill your expectations? The output of this workshop was the input for the Refugee Hackathon, where we worked on 18 different projects. Some of them were already existing projects which were further developed or extended. Because one thing we also wanted to focus on is not reinvent the wheel. Many projects have already been worked on. We wanted to find the best ones. Maybe some are already sufficient and really good. One of them is volunteerplanner.org, which is matching the need for volunteers' time and skill with the available time and skill of specific volunteers. This worked only before the hackathon in Berlin for 6 locations. During the hackathon, they extended that to all Germany, and it's now working in nearly 60 locations all over Germany. It connects 35,000 volunteers, and it has already coordinated 110,000 volunteer hours. And it's now translated to Greek language, as I just heard from Paula today. I didn't even knew that, because the problem is the same also in other countries. So why not use a good solution? We also developed new solutions. One of them I want to shortly describe. It's called homeforrefugees.org, the 4 as a number in the web address. It's going live, it should be going live throughout January this month. And it will match housing offers with housing needs from refugees. And it's a terribly cumbersome bureaucratic process to do that the normal way. You still can't avoid all of it. You still have to go to agencies, get permissions, etc. But it's still a shortcut. And this also will be available in many languages. And I know that this project needs funding, so if somebody here in this room likes to contribute, homeforrefugees.org would be a very good way to support. One thing we also learned at the hackathon is that there are problems you cannot address with apps or other digital solutions. But as a tech community, we have to help address those problems because they are structural problems. Things like, what use is an internet really cool solutions if 95% of refugee homes in Germany have no internet access? So we have to address this problem as a core problem. And it's primarily because we have something stupid like Störerhaftung in Germany, which means if you provide an open wireless access, you are held responsible if somebody else downloads illegally a Lady Gaga song or an Arab language movie, something like that. So we have to change this law also to address this problem of making internet available to refugee homes. There are ways of sidestepping this somehow. The Freifunk community is trying to do it, so it's somehow possible, but it's cumbersome. You also need to outreach people once you have found a really good solution, and we have not yet found a good way to do this. So there are cool solutions, but people don't know about it. So the most contacts refugees have is with lots of authorities, sometimes every day one appointment with whichever authority. Those authorities would know more about these projects and would have a list of best digital solutions to help refugees and volunteers. They can hand them out and reach 100% of refugees. So this is something we also try to work on to address this overall problem.
So this is a very crucial thing, because I think that none of us here are saying that technology is going to solve the crisis or solve or let's not call it a crisis, or that's not going to be the magic solution to any problems. But in a way, what we're trying to say, I think, is that there are solutions which can scale much, much faster than governments can make decisions, and also the NGOs often move in a traditional manner. In the same way that lean startups, fast-moving startups in the technology world started to disrupt traditional businesses, we're saying that some of these solutions can actually bring, empowerment and, good things to the whole issue in a much, much faster and scalable way, correct?
Absolutely, and I think that it's a lot about making ends meet. So there's people who want to help, there's people with specific skills that are very much needed, and they just don't find the right way to apply them. Then when it comes to storage systems, for example, technology is one important factor here that can help you understand what is actually available in a specific region. But then if you don't understand what the person that just arrived, for example, needs, so the user in that case, then you cannot provide exactly what is.
Anna.
So what is really important for us is really the word co-creation, and this goes all across. It means that we need to work together with refugees and not just talk about refugees. Yeah. But it also means that we need public-private partnerships. So we need NGOs and governments working together. We need for-profit organizations working with non-profit organizations and leveraging the best from each. Because this is the only way that we can get out of this really, really complex situation that we're in right now.
We tried to achieve that and invited public authorities to the refugee hackathon. Unfortunately, unsuccessfully. And then just recently, 2 or 3 days ago, the federal authority responsible for migration and refugees they developed an app themselves called uncommon.something.de probably. And a journalist told me that he talked to the vice president of that very federal authority and asked them, how did you involve refugees in developing this app? And you only ask refugees to test the finished app. And that's just the wrong way.
That's crazy.
That is totally stupid and crazy, I have to say that. And that's the Federal Authority for Refugees. All their buildings are full of refugees, so they really have a zero distance to bridge. It's just the matter of respect and common sense, and just asking the people you claim you want to bring a solution to.
What are some of the things that you've been impressed by that has come from the tech world? For instance, one of the biggest problems is educated people coming from Syria, for instance, and then losing all of their papers all of the documentation that actually proves that they might be a university lecturer or something like that. At the Tech Refugees Conference in London in November, we had a refugee called Hassan who had perfect English and explained in perfect English how he had got out of Syria, Aleppo, got to Turkey, got onto one of these crazy inflatable boats, nearly drowned because the boat turned over, and he was holding his hands up in the air, and he had his papers in one hand that proved he was he could teach English as a foreign language, and his mobile phone in the other, and he had to make a choice about how he would actually survive with a life jacket on. So he basically dumped his papers, put his hands together, and this is a true story, WhatsApped his friend in New York and told him, "I'm drowning off the coast of Lesbos. Can you call the Coast Guard?" You know, and using WhatsApp. Now, and managed to, basically, the Coast Guard rescued him, incredible story, and he somehow made it to Calais, did all the stuff that we read about in the news all the time, like jumped trains, got into lorries, into trucks, and managed to get to the UK. And, you know, this is an educated guy. Now, there are obviously big solutions out there that we know about, the communications technologies that we're familiar with, Facebook. There are massive Facebook groups being used by refugees to try and find routes out of Turkey and routes out of their, you know, the hellhole that they're in, and massive WhatsApp groups as well. So in a way, these are almost like app stores for the solutions that we can come up with, the distribution mechanisms. But as you say, it's not much use if they can't get Wi-Fi access or they can't get online and things like that. But I mean, some of the things that you guys have come across, you know, there's the Migrate solution. They turned it into a way to apply more legally for asylum and things like that.
So we're actually going to start working together with Migrate now when it comes to finding the best refugee entrepreneurs.
Because one of the things that you're working on is also funding.
Yeah.
So how is that going to work?
Well, we have a structure in place that's basically a non-fund fund. It's money that was given from a number of venture capital donors, I would say. So we are able to...
So basically, you're doing kind of like a startup approach. You've got some high net worth individuals, some VCs who are going to contribute to your fund, and then you're going to operate kind of like a VC.
But the interesting thing here is that we track data from day one. So basically, we look at the deliveries that a service has made. We think about potential other islands where this service, for example, could be implemented. Another thing is, you know, how to reach more users, how you can implement a go-to-market strategy, how you can get it to your customers, because we do treat people as customers that have specific needs that are not being met. And for us, that is also something that comes with assuring quality for the person that actually needs that service. And
so it's all refugee-centered design in a way, isn't it?
Yes.
But, Anna, what I'd like to know is, though, that you're doing this coding school in Berlin, but you do want to be able to scale it. I mean, so how are you going to be able to scale it, the project?
So what we're doing right now is really, I go by the strategy of building before you nail it. So in the idea, our big vision is really to make this something that will work all across Europe. But rather than just having an idea and putting it out there, we really wanted to test it and see, does it actually work? Does it have the impact that we are looking for? Then everything will be open as a blueprint. Our partners will be out there. And then we are hoping that other people can pick it up and either implement it as part of a franchise or just be inspired by it. We can already see one of my friends in South Korea has started a tech school working with North Korean refugees.
Oh, your mic's gone off somewhere. We're going to get another microphone. And where do you go with your project from here? What's the next thing?
One project I also like to mention, because it's particularly relevant, I think, with regard to so many different things taking place at the same time, and sometimes similar things, is this project has a working name, MetaBrain, which indirectly explains probably what it's meant to. And it's building an open, accessible database about all those digital solutions for refugees and volunteers. and describing them in a very structural manner, not only by function, what does it do, like volunteer planner, matching volunteers' time and needs, etc., but it also describes how is this implemented, what programming languages were used, what security modules were applied, things like that. So what we want, and not only finished projects, not only ready-made apps, also work in progress
Right.
projects. And we want, once it's live, and it's probably something around early March that's going live, it will be easier as a tech volunteer to identify what's already done. So many techies have the urge to do something because they just can't watch those news any longer without doing something themselves. Also, it makes it easier to bear this terrible situation. But then they start too fast developing things which already exist. So they can first look up what's already there, but they can also find at those work in progress projects what type of skills are there still needed. And my idea is that you can have like an RSS feed where you, for example, make a little check mark. I'm a Python programmer. If there's a need for a Python programmer, I want to know. Yeah, so you can check this in your projects and the database, and then you get that email. So that's something we
Anna,
want to have.
Yeah.
So one of the things that really fascinates me is not just looking at refugee projects and working with refugees, but also tapping into the knowledge of these refugees. We just heard a perfect example of saving your mobile phone as a, holding on to hope. But really to see, what if you're an insurance company and you can start doing micro insurance on mobile phones? You can pay maybe 50 cents a day or a week to make sure that that lifeline, you will always have access to it. And this, I find really, really interesting to see the refugees as experts in innovation. They are the most extreme users you will find in mobile technology, and use it as part of the business development. Let's not, yes, we are working with victims of war, but let's really see them as a resource and give them the dignity to feel like true experts, because that will also give hope.
Yeah, they're operating at the absolute edge of what mobile tech is capable of.
And it's people who want to rebuild their lives. So there's nothing that they want more than that. And it's obvious that we all need to do the best we can in order to make this happen.
I'd like to add something to that.
Mention about, sorry, Carol.
I found that point particularly interesting because the German debate especially, and I think it's similar in other countries too, is deals with refugees as an anonymous mass coming. And if we say things like 1 million problems, yeah, I also live together with refugees in my home, and one of them from Syria said a perfect quote. He said, "Why do we always look at us as if we were 1 million problems? We are 1 million solutions coming to this country." And this is just a different mindset. Yeah? Yeah. And I think we all should embrace the creativity, the knowledge, the talents they have. One other of the Syrian refugees living in our house for a while, he said, "I'm not a refugee, I'm an artist." He, by the way, worked at the refugee hackathon too as an artist, because you also need to look, to have things look nice, But this is what we also must somehow change in our way to look at refugees, because it's a bit of paternalistic view very often. But we are the ones helping the ones in need, but they have so much to contribute. And to know more about this and make it possible like you do, I think is a really great endeavor.
Paula, you have a project that's going to be running at Davos, right?
Well, we are looking at the refugee camp in Davos, thinking about challenges that they face technologically and how operations can be improved. We have identified the best possible entrepreneurs from the camp, and this is also where I would like to cooperate with Annemore to find ways in order to really mature the ecosystem there, so to say, to make operations effective and to really give these people a chance to start their lives again. And this would be done through microloans, for example, through mentoring over webinars where you engage people from other communities.
You could do, remote learning is, that could be an incredible opportunity. I'm going to give, in the closing, we've got about 5 minutes left before we have to finish, but if there's any questions or points people would like to make, I know that there's one or two people in the group, in the room who have some perspectives on this. I don't know if we have a microphone or not. Will the microphone work? Go ahead.
Hey, my name is Lynn. I'm an entrepreneur here in Munich, and we are actually building a platform for the publishing, commenting, rating of solutions and best practices to global problems. So I would love to work with you guys to actually document these things. The problem that we found is that it's actually very hard to get people to actually document their best practices. So what we are doing is currently we have about 20 volunteers who literally call people and then interview people and then write for our platform. So my question for you guys is, you identified it as a problem that these solutions are not known very well. Question is, do you have any insight how you get people to actually document what they are doing and what works well?
Can I?
Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, usually what works best is that you look at the user numbers, of course, and what many people do a lot is that they just set up a scrap website where they say, this is the service, sign up here if you want to know more, and then they start from day zero, basically, and they look at the database of emails that comes in, and they say, we're going to launch this soon, and then they start building, they come out with a pretty scrappy solution, and then they improve it as they go along, because the thing is that right now it's about immediate action with many things that are required, and design and everything you can work around that. And since you don't know your user so well, what is most important is that you're flexible, and you will never be perfect because this problem keeps changing, the face of it keeps on developing, and I think perfectionism is something that is very much missing.
Certainly, I concur, and we in our Tech4Gs Facebook group, we've nearly 3,000 members of this now, and I mean, every day there is something coming through, somebody's working on an app or whatever, and so curating what's coming out is an issue that, I mean, we're going to end up solving somehow.
It shouldn't be done by Tech4Gs as long as those are not refugees themselves,
Well, yeah,
because
this is obviously we're all trying to get across
whether it's
this.
a good app or not us. I mean, I can also have an opinion on this, and I do, but the final and most impactful decision should come from refugees who use it, like any other commercial app too.
Absolutely, and this is what we also advocate as well, that it should be co-created with the refugee community. Any other final points or questions anybody would like to make before we finish? So just closing off, where do we go from here? What do you think are then going to be the great things that are going to happen next, and any problems or obstacles you might encounter? I think obviously one of the trickiest one that's going on right now is the whole political situation, especially after the Paris attacks and things that happened in Cologne. So the political atmosphere is very difficult to talk about the refugee issue. And what I think is really fantastic about the technology community's response is that this is a very positive message. We're saying that refugees are not a problem, they're both solutions and a resource, and a community of people who can create solutions themselves as well as be users of technology. So, I mean, what are the things that you want to do next, and where do you see issues or opportunities, Paula?
Well, we're focusing very much on Greece. We're preparing for a very difficult summer at the moment. We're mapping out the solutions that are most promising.
Yeah, because obviously spring is going to happen, summer is going to happen, the boats are going to start again, it's all going to come back again. And so we've all got to be prepared for this.
And we want to be ready to scale quickly. It's not as cost effective as it's done today, and we can theoretically want to be able to roll it in then also when it's not needed anymore. And we're looking at the best ways to apply these.
Anke, what are the things, next steps for you?
I'm currently collaborating with the House of the Cultures of the World in Berlin, who prepare a conference early March on Civic Society 4.0, which is only dedicated to empowering refugees, and it also involves lots of refugees. But what is not my project, but a project I consider very important, is the Chiron University, because it's a very good example of showing how the refugee crisis, or actually the governmental crisis around refugees, is helping to solve a structural problem we have had for decades, and now solve it not just for refugees, but for the rest of the society too. And that's the access to higher level education. You mentioned before that they came without their papers, which is the natural way of arriving for a refugee. But it's very hard to register at universities for proper certified education without those access papers. So what Chiron University does, for the first 2 years, you don't have to fulfill any precondition, no paper, no test, nothing. And you can, for 2 years, take part in online classes, really good ones of those MOOCs. In this time and period, you have, of course, exams, and you have to pass them. But if you are successful those 2 years, the third year, you go into a real, located somewhere, one of those, so far, that's 16 universities. You attend the last year on campus, in real life, make the final exams, and get a proper BA certificate. In those 2 years, you can also get your asylum status done.
That's fantastic.
If this works for refugees, and it does right now, so the first 1,000 are registered, it will not be possible to tell working class kids it's only for refugees, it's not for you. We will have to open up our educational systems, and refugees will help us make this happen.
I think that's an extremely good point. What's the next steps for you guys?
So the biggest news is I've quit my job, my previous job, to dedicate myself 100% to this. It's been a long journey for the past 4 months, going through all the bureaucracy in Germany that you need to start a social enterprise. We are this close. We just need the Finanzamt, so send them some good karma to approve our Gemeinnützigkeit. So we are a social startup, and then we can start taking funding, because it's a big piece of the puzzle that is missing, is how do we support all these wonderful initiatives that are run by volunteers right now. But if you need to juggle at least 9 to 5 or 7 job, and you need to do this in your spare time, we're going to burn out. So there's a huge need for funding, whether it comes from government, whether it's crowdfunding, whether it comes from big businesses. It's not like I don't care where they come from. I really do care, because I really want good partnerships. But funding is essential. We can't just live on goodwill.
That's absolutely true. And if you'd like to support any of these projects, I'm sure you'd like to come talk to these people afterwards. Certainly, Tech4Gs, we're up and running, and we're going to be highlighting and beating the drum about these fantastic technology solutions and these communities who are talking about the positive aspects of this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening, and thank you to our panel. See you again.